Okay, here we go. See if I can mess this one up too. So this week's going to be very casual, as was last week's. In any case, more or less a light commentary. So I do a little bit of e-bike riding through Peterborough. I have to be pretty careful. I've seen some awfully close incidents where could have been major accidents, and a lot of people on these e-bikes, they just don't take any care. In any case, I want to mention a little bit about the homeless down in Peterborough. Let me turn this down a little bit. That last week I saw a lot of homeless people just parked out on Water and George, down that area, and just parked on the main street. And this is in front of active businesses. And I see them camping out behind the Tim Hortons down by the railway tracks. And I walked down a little way. I guess they were city officials moved them. Terrible mess. So I don't know. I don't know what the bylaws are. I don't know what police or officials can do. Homelessness is a component of our society now. If you've been down to the GTA in Toronto, it's crazy down there. It's just crazy. But in any case, I don't know what the police or bylaw enforcement can do to eliminate some of this. I know it doesn't seem very business proactive to have people just sitting and parked out, sleeping right in front of your business when you're paying crazy high taxes by the city for being there. Of course, I have a strong opinion, but I can't use profanity, and I really probably shouldn't express my full opinion, but I don't think it's right. But I think there's enough available land around Peterborough that Peterborough could set aside an area for the homeless and get them off Main Street. I'm not saying that's an answer. I have spoken to a couple of homeless people, and I think it's a combination of drugs, alcohol, lack of education. They really don't have any skill set. And a couple of people I have spoken to, they really don't want to work. They're just there more or less for a handout. That's not the way society works today. In any case, I saw something else. I was down at the Peterborough Marina, and I believe they were two bylaw enforcement officers. If they weren't, they were two Peterborough police officers. And there was this one fellow who had his cart full of miscellaneous, and he was sitting on one of the benches at the marina. And I'm assuming it was one of his friends was sitting on the grass behind. And I couldn't hear the whole conversation, and I wasn't quick enough to record it. But I could hear a lot of profanity, and this one fellow was firing slurs and things at the two officers. And he was saying, I'm physically impaired and I'm mentally handicapped, and telling these officers that they were just harassing him and his friend. And I suppose, as much as anything, to avoid a major scene, the two officers walked away. without knowing what the bylaws are, I don't know what their options were. But I went back the next day and they weren't there. In any case, it had to be an awkward position for the officers, and seeing that these two homeless young men were parked right where the boats were being moored, it wasn't an ideal situation, for sure. It didn't make the city of Peterborough look really enticing. I'm not saying it could have been a problem, but it just wasn't a very good situation. So I don't know what you do about that, but anyway, I've noticed something else for the last, especially last summer. There are a lot of boat owners from the U.S., and they were openly flying U.S. flags on their boats. And as was the case last year, the majority of the larger boats at the marina were U.S.-owned boats. And I did speak to some of the owners, and they had mentioned that they were apprehensive about coming up into Canada, up into Peterborough, because of the current situation between the U.S. and Canada, in part, I suppose, caused by this, the U.S. administration. But regardless, they were apprehensive last summer, and this summer there's one boat as of this last weekend, being July the 12th, one boat with a U.S. flag, and the owner of that boat had a number of Canadian flags hanging all over his boat. So I'm assuming that with the price of fuel and the continuation of this somewhat harsh or terse situation between the U.S. and Canada, American boat owners are a little bit reluctant to come up into Canada. And I don't know how much less or more the cost of fuel for these boats is in Canada as compared to the U.S. And maybe it's just simply a dollar exchange. But in any case, only one boat this past weekend with American registry at the Peterborough Marina, which I find very interesting. And to make note, last summer, the majority of the boat slips had reasonably large boats. This year, there's only a few larger boats. The rest are all very small, which is interesting in itself. And I want to speak a little bit about this Canada Goose situation. I know what I would do, but again, I have to be polite and correct. But this Canada Goose situation down at the Peterborough Marina, it's simply out of control. I spoke to one of the attendants working there, and she said they end up spending half the day just cleaning off the sidewalks with duck poop or goose poop. I don't know. I don't know what you can do, but I know that they've had the weekend events, especially 2 weekends ago. Last one was partially rained out last week, but in any case, I don't know how they can hold the events when the ground is just covered in poop. It's just crazy. And if you walk down to the beach, there's so much excrement floating on the water, you can't go in. So I don't know how you politically address this Canada Goose situation, but it's a friggin' mess. And it certainly isn't a pleasure to go down to the Peterborough Marina and see all this garbage and crap all over everywhere. It's just not right. In any case, that's my commentary about that. So I want to speak a little bit about when I was younger and in university. I picked up 2 contracts with NORAD, and I won't say in what capacity, but it was in technical engineering, radar and communication systems. And to work in this position, we had to train at a NORAD training facility down in Colorado Springs. And we had a number of tests we had to pass. And it was fairly intense. They expected a certain level of technology and engineering for all of the candidates that were there. And it was a mixed group, Canadian and American. I can't remember exactly how many of us started out in the class, but I'm going to make an estimate. The classroom was filled. It was a classroom environment. And perhaps there was 40 of us. Nice, easy, round number. And we had to pass these exams. And we had to get a top secret security clearance. Well, as it worked out, the course was 8 weeks. And at the end of it, many people couldn't get a security clearance. And other people couldn't pass the course requirements. We ended up as Canadians, I think there were 4 of us, and the Americans, I'm not sure. But let's say there were 8 of us out of 40 graduated or completed the program and received our top secret security clearances. In any case, I want to tell you a little more about the training. We trained from 9 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, 5 days a week. The weekends we were taken around Colorado Springs, and shown some of the sites, which was great. I think the biggest issue with that program was getting top secret clearances. Many clearances didn't come through until the last minute. And I'm going to make an assumption that some of the people who didn't graduate the course, they didn't graduate because their clearances didn't come through in time. So I don't know what the issues are relating to getting a top secret clearance, but in any case. So let's move beyond that. So we had our clearances, we passed the course material, and then we went to these fairly remote sites, and they were fairly remote. We had a number of sites running from the Aleutian Islands on the west, across Canada, into Greenland, Iceland, and down into Europe, which was the first line of defense in the Cold War for potential Russian incursions coming over the pole. And I can't give you the exact time frame, but in the 40s again, there was another search and acknowledgement line running across the middle of Canada. So there were 2. There were like a remote line of defense and like a midline. So in any case, I'll tell you what happened when I was working at one of the remote stations. So I was given an opportunity to go to a station called Alert. And that, I gotta be careful what I say. Anyway, Alert was a very interesting station, and it was primarily a listening station. I think that's okay to say. But it was reasonably sophisticated, and I was only there for one night. There was a flight going up, and I was able to take the flight up, spend the night, and come back. So without revealing too much, that was really interesting. So I was working upgrading radar communication systems at a number of different stations, and to get between the stations there was approximately 200-mile So what would that make it? It's about a 350-kilometer distance between each station, roughly. And we had to take aircraft across the different stations, east and west, to get to these stations. And they were all radar communications stations. And so at one of the sites, which I was not at, is called Tuktoyaktuk. You can find that on Google. And there was a station located at that location. And there was another one called Cape Dyer in the east. And I can't remember the third site, but we had 3 authenticated flying object reports. Everybody, if you say UFO, then everyone goes crazy and thinks you're fabricating something. So how about I just say unidentified flying something? But working for NORAD, these sightings were picked up on radar. And the way radar works, it's not visual, not in the sense you can see the outline of an aircraft or something. You see a thing called skin paint. It's where radar sends out an electromagnetic pulse, and the radar picks up the return pulse, and it's put on a PPI, a planned position indicator, which you've seen probably in movies. It's usually a round screen with a something in the middle, I forget what it was called. Anyway, something in the middle turning, which picks up the radar indication. And in general terms, a radar indication means a solid object. And yes, there can be weather inversions where weather can give a false reading, but we were using fairly sophisticated radar. And so we had 3 authenticated sites, viewings, objects. And the reason I say they were authenticated is they were picked up. Each station, we had coverage by each adjacent station. So each sighting was picked up by 3 radar stations. So it wasn't a flaw in one station's equipment. And this would have been in the summer of 1979 or 80, maybe 78 or 79. In any case, this component or section of NORAD was hooked up to SAC, Strategic Air Command, and we notified SAC. SAC sent up investigators, and they took all the logs, and the radar stations had cameras on them to record what was seen on the radar screens. They took everything. They took the logs. They took statements from everyone. They looked for impairment through alcohol or anything like that. And then they left. Was never another word about it. But we had 3 of them. So I say they were authenticated because SAC, Strategic Air Command, sent up investigators, and they were up there within 48 hours, if not sooner. And they did their investigation and took all the data they could get. My understanding is there was one landing, a confirmed landing site, and I heard that they found something in the ground. I don't mean material, I mean like contamination or something along that line. Remember, we had top secret clearances on a need-to-know basis. So, all of this data wasn't revealed to us, but it definitely occurred, which is really interesting. kind of promotes the idea that all of this innuendo or all of these social media creations about aliens and alien life and all this sort of thing. I'm a conspiracy theorist. I believe everything is founded in truth or in some component of truth. And is there exaggeration afterwards? Probably, possibly. Nobody turns it. If there was a good news station, nobody would watch it. Everybody watches the bad news. So to say, okay, we've got a UFO sighting, big deal, nobody cares. But, you know, if it involves national security or whatever, then people are interested. And is there exaggeration? Probably. But if you believe some of the stories, I think sooner than later, the public it's going to be revealed to the public that there is interaction between humanity and alien life. I don't think there's any doubt. Any of you out there have the time, look up the Drake equation. It's very interesting, but it basically puts down the number of possible planets that can support life in our galaxy at hundreds of billions, because every single star you see generally has a system of planets around it, like our star, the sun. And there are thoughts that, look at the stars up there. There's billions of them. So in any case, I thought that was interesting. And do I know more? Yes. I'm just not sure what else I can say about it. But I did speak to some of, this part is hearsay in terms of I received this information from people directly, but I mean, anyway, when I first arrived, I was there for 2 summers as part of my university program, getting a summer job. And I spoke to these older gentlemen who had been there when these facilities were built. And they said it was pretty much normal to see strange things when they were up there breaking ground and so forth and so forth. Again, it's not hearsay really. I mean, I did speak to them directly. I know who they were. And are their memories accurate or factual? Probably. In any case, I thought that's very interesting. I can also tell you this, that there is, I'm going to call it an underground city, unoccupied, but fully furnished and fully capable of returning to human environment probably within a day or two if need be. And it's extremely far up north, and the runways are 20,000 feet, not meters, feet in length. In other words, they're capable of carrying pretty much the largest aircraft that the U.S. has. I say U.S. military has. And there were, unless you worked there and were inquisitive and you noticed things were strange, you wouldn't know. But anyway, I asked the head of this station what that was. And he said, well, I can let you go down. He said, it hasn't been used in probably 50 years, but you're welcome to go down, take a flashlight just to be sure. In any case, I don't know how far down into these stairs I went, but a long way. So I get down there, and there's a total underground, call it a hotel. I'm told it could accommodate 1,000 people or more. Kitchens, beds, bunks, everything packaged up, ready to go. uh, I'm assuming in case of a nuclear war. But it's really interesting because I understand that the U.S., probably every nation, has a number of these secret, undocumented locations where people can go and be potentially safe for a while from the fallout from a nuclear war. But I never did. I call it an underground city, but I never did see the end of it. It was absolutely massive, huge. It was spotless clean. A little bit dusty, but it was spotless clean, and it looked like a military base underground, and it was really interesting. But there's another one. So let me look at another situation. So I was teaching university down in the States, southern states, for quite some time. And I won't make this too personal, but in any case, I had acquired all of my American fixed-wing aviation licenses. Commercial, single and multi-engine instrument rating, with sufficient PIC hours to challenge the air traffic air traffic rating, ATR. Has different acronyms, but in any case, down in the States, I understand it's changed up here in Canada, but down in the States, if you have a single engine instrument rating, you cannot legally fly a twin engine aircraft under instrument flight conditions. So down the States, you have commercial, single, and multi-engine instrument ratings, and you go for an ATR or transport rating. After you acquire, I believe it's 1,000 hours PIC, pilot and command time. And that was really interesting. And I'm going to tell you what happened. So I was building up hours, which is a requirement to get your commercial. Might have been for my my instrument rating. But in any case, I was building up flight hours. And so one of the ways that I built up flight hours is my instructor, his name was Bill Freeman. I don't even know if Bill's still alive, but in any case, I remember him. So this would be back in the 80s. So I was flying and teaching at the same time. So I said to Bill, let's go down to, I was flying primarily out of Pompano Air Center, Pompano Aviation out of Pompano Air Center. It's just off Pompano Beach. I did most of my ground school at Opelika Airport. They had a flight service center there where you could write the FAA aviation exams. And once you passed those, you could do your flight test wherever. But I did my ground school at Opelika, which is just north of Miami, and did my flight testing at Pompano Aviation. In any case, I said to my instructor, good guy, easy going. So I said, let me rent a plane. And I haven't been down to Key West before. And I said, how about you going down? I'll rent the plane. I'm the PIC. You can go down and just go for a ride. I said, we'll stop at Key West and have a meal, and we'll fly back up. So he said, good. He said, sounds good to me. And I said, I'm paying for everything. So I rented a single engine plane because I was building up hours from Pompano Aviation, and I was going to pick up Bill over at Fort Lauderdale Executive Airport, which was just a hop, skip, and a jump away. I mean, I no longer took off from Pompano, and I was calling Fort Lauderdale Executive Tower, getting permission to land. In any case, so the whole thing started to get kind of screwy. It was really interesting. any of you who've done flying, you'll know. So I took off. The flight conditions at Pompano were fine. The 351 visual was good. So I get up to 1,000 feet AGL, above ground level. I think ground level was, I don't know, 200 feet or something down at Pompano. In any case, I get up to 1,200 feet above ground. I call over to Fort Lauderdale executive, and I said, asking for landing instructions. And they say, we're locked into IFR, Instrument Flight Rules. And I said, how can this be? I said, I can see the airport. It's fine. And he said, well, we don't have enough visibility. And unless you have special flight credentials. And I said, how about special VFR? He says, that works. So he said, I spoke to the fellow on the tower briefly when I landed. A lot of new pilots don't understand that to have special permission, you don't necessarily have to have an instrument rating, but you have to have special VFR. As long as you can meet the visual requirements, you're fine. It takes the responsibility off the controller. In any case, I landed at Fort Lauderdale Executive, and Bill, being the dog he is, had his girlfriend, which is fine. Who cares? So they jump in the back, and they're having fun. So I took off from Fort Lauderdale Executive and flew over top of Miami International, or West Palm Beach. West Palm Beach first, I guess, and then Miami International. Then I followed the Keys down to Key West. And as many of you may know, the western boundary of the Bermuda Triangle, more or less, sort of, grabs onto the Keys going down to Key West. And I'll interject and give you a little bit more. Remember the first time I was flying down to Key West, again, building hours, flight hours, there's a military base just north of Key West Airport. And here I am going along like nobody's business, happy as can be. And I'm calling into Key West Airport and asking for landing instructions, but here I am ready to land at the military base. And so the military base gives me a blast of HELL and said, be careful, don't land here because we will hold your plane and hold you until you get clearances. I said, I didn't know. So if any of you take a look at the maps, you'll see the confusion because Key West, there's kind of like a big hook at the bottom of the Keys. So it's easy to get confused if you haven't been down there a few times. Anyway, I managed to land at Key West. No problem, it was all good. So I'm flying down the Keys with Bill and his girlfriend, and we land at Key West. I actually forget the name of the restaurant we went to, but it was very nice. That cost me $1 or $2, but it was okay. In any case, by the time we left the restaurant, I don't use alcohol or drugs or anything, and I'm fairly sure that he had a couple of drinks, but he wasn't the PIC, so I was. In any case, it was dark, and it's always my preference to fly at night. Flying at night, the air's nice and calm, it's cool. Flying at night is wonderful. It's actually the best. In any case, so we departed Key West International, and I was flying visual, VFR, Visual Flight Rules, and I could see the Keys below, and I was using my VOR and compass. I knew where Miami International was. That was the next major overflight on my way back to Fort Lauderdale Executive. In any case, Bill's in the back. I won't use too much descriptors, but he's in the back having fun. And I was following my VOR and my magnetic compass, and he poked his head up from whatever. He said, where are you going? I said, heading north back to Miami International, or, to fly over Miami International. So what happens, I had lost, my magnetic compass failed, my VOR failed, all my navigation failed. I was heading out into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And I'm gonna guess. I think I was in a was in a Cessna 172 or 175. Any case, our ground speed was probably 150 to 175 knots. I can't remember the exact speed, but in any case, here I was, fly, what I thought I was flying the magnetic indicators using my instruments. I mean, I wasn't on an instrument flight path or anything like that, but I know that Miami was northish, so I could see the Keys. At one point, I could see the Keys below me. Anyway, I didn't keep looking down, which is a rookie mistake, a big one. I was heading around in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. I'd probably been heading out, I don't know, for 30 minutes. Anyway, Bill said, "Where the H are you going?" So he jumped in the front seat, the co-pilot seat, and he said, "Oh, you know, a lot of profanity. Well, not too much profanity, but." He said, "Woo, we got to get back on course." So all our compasses, all our magnetic, all our instruments was dead. Nothing worked. Everything was dead. Thankfully, the magneto was still working. The engine was fine. But in any case, we could see when you're up around, we were up around 8,000 or 9,000 feet, which is fine. It wasn't a pressurized plane, so we could see the lights. Once we started to turn left, more westerly, we could see a glow, probably Miami. Anyway, we started to head back in because at night you can't see the water from the ground. You have to look for lights. Anyway, we started to head back, and of course, as we called Miami, our radios worked, so we called Miami International and told them our situation, and they said, "Do you want us to send up a jet interceptor to escort you back to Miami?" Well, as you may or may not know, or you could surmise, if you ask for emergency help, there's going to be HELL to pay. I'm not sure of the financial issues associated with that. There might not be any. I'm not sure. But we declined to have a jet sent up to escort us back. We were on Miami's radar for a while. We lost that too. So we were on Miami's radar. In any case, they gave us headings to get us straightened up. And so after we declined having a jet escort back up, they said they would keep us on their radar. And they knew we were going into Fort Lauderdale Executive. And what happened then? And we advised that we had lost all of our electronics except our radios and our engine, and that if our radios died, would they please, make allowances or give us some airspace. We would do our best to fly overhead of Miami and down into Fort Lauderdale Exec. Well, as you would know it, shortly thereafter, we lost our radios. And I don't know when or if we lost our communicate. I don't know if Miami lost us on radar, but in any case, so we flew overhead of Miami, which is usually a safe zone, and we advised aircraft going into and out of Fort Lauderdale Executive that we were flying blind with no lights, no navigation, and to please give us a little bit of extra space. So we landed and parked the airplane on the ramp, and that was all fine. What did I do with the keys? Bill had his car parked there. That's where I picked them up initially. he drove me back because I would have normally dropped him off at Fort Lauderdale Exec and flown back to Pompano. So in any case, we didn't want to take a chance with the plane in case the engine stalled out. We didn't want to crash. I mean, we're talking, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 plane. Anyway, so we just parked it at Fort Lauderdale Exec. He drove me back to Pompano, and I dropped the keys off. I'm pretty sure it was a drop box at Fort Lauderdale, at Pompano Aviation. In any case, I was a student there, so they knew me, and they knew how to contact me and so forth. So I called in and left a voice recording and explained what had occurred and where the aircraft was, because I didn't want to, think it was stolen or anything like that. So that part was okay. I think I did everything more or less properly. I mean, there was no fine. Nothing ever happened. I mean, I wasn't prohibited from using the planes or anything. So I did my best to use common sense. So I left them a voice message because they were all locked up. I think we got back at 11 or 12 midnight. So there was no one there. At the time, there wasn't even security. In any case, I left a voice message, and in the morning, I get a call from them. Would I come down and see them at the office and have a chat? So I expected that, and that's perfectly right. I mean, you would expect it. So they asked what had happened, and I explained the whole thing, and they knew who Bill Freeman was because he was an instructor at Pompano. He wasn't an instructor at the time. That's why I picked him up at Fort Lauderdale Exec. In any case, they saw that he was on board the plane. And I said, he was just a passenger. I'm the PIC. I'm the pilot in command. I rented the plane. I have responsibility. So in any case, they said they sent over a mechanic and a pilot to check the plane out and, to bring it home. And they couldn't find anything wrong. The battery was perfect. The avionics were perfect. It fired up right away. Everything worked. It was the plane was, perfect. They couldn't find a thing wrong with it. So, is it another example of touching the Bermuda Triangle? I don't know. But I tell you honestly, it happened. I don't think I can give you many more details. Was it scary? No. It wasn't. You didn't have time to be scared. You had to keep thinking, and my mistake was too much dependence on instruments and not enough looking out the window. And even if you're flying under an instrument, you're flying by instruments with a flight path, you still have to spend time looking out the window. I mean, instruments are great, but you still, as a pilot in command, you still have to be responsible to look out the window. And I was building hours, and I was, reasonably inexperienced. So that was my major mistake, not looking out. But in any case, that's what really happened. And I'm sure somewhere all of the event is recorded in the annals of aviation history down in South Florida. But really interesting. So I'm going to give you another flight occurrence which happened. I spent a lot of time flying. There's kind of a big story why I was getting all my flight licenses. But my dad was going to buy a plane. He was a builder developer, and he didn't want to use the airlines he didn't want to fly their times. He wanted to be able to come and go as he wanted. So he paid for my aviation training, and he sent me, after I finished everything. The only thing I didn't get is an ATR, air transport rating, and of course after that I'd had to have acquired a type rating. A type rating is where you learn how to fly a specific aircraft. So in any case, he wanted to purchase a jet, and so he told me, he said, gave me a price range to work with, and so I went down to flight sales down to Miami International and was speaking to a sales company down there, and we looked at two planes, an Mitsubishi MU2, which is a twin prop turboprop, and Buttonville Airport had one for some time. Actually, we're looking at three. I liked it. It was really good. I liked it. We're looking at a Cessna Citation. I don't remember the model number, but it was single engine certified, or single pilot certified, which was interesting. And I actually can't remember if the MU2 was single pilot certified. I think it was. And I looked at another one, a Lear 23, which I believe is 2 pilot requirement. In any case, I just want to tell you a little bit about I had one flight in a Lear 23, and it was a hoot. It was being tested again down at Pompano Aviation, Pompano Airport, and I just happened to be there. And this pilot said to me, "I know you've got all your licenses. Do you want to go for a flight ride? I got to test this thing out. I need a second in command on the right seat." So I said, "Sure, I love that." So what I learned from flying a Lear 23, is smaller aircraft, they're pretty forgiving. They're really forgiving. You can pretty well do anything, a little bit of common sense, you can recover. With an MU2, no, an MU2 and a Lear 23, you really have to fly the numbers. You have to know your rotation speeds, your flaps up, flaps down. You have to know your speeds. I forget all my acronyms, but you really do. Lears is so fast, and the flight envelope is so narrow. And it's pretty much the same for the Mitsubishi. I had a flight in the Mitsubishi MU2. I never did get a flight in the Cessna Citation. It might have been a Cessna Citation 2, maybe. I never did get a flight in it. But in any case, the Lear was wild, fast. I think the plane was empty. He was only doing a flight test on it. I don't actually know what he was testing, but he needed a second. In any case, I think we went up to 35,000 feet, and I think it took 6 minutes to get up there, and he wasn't pushing anything. Just plain fast. It's just like a damn rocket. Sorry about that, but it was a great experience. Lots of fun. Lots and lots of fun. It was good. I don't think there's anything else I really wanted to speak about today. I've asked a couple of friends to do an interactive podcast with me, just to speak about general things, to get another perspective on things, and everybody's afraid. Yeah, I get it. Okay, well, I do understand, but what the heck. I was going to speak a little bit about the Iran-U.S. situation, but Everybody is speaking about that. Everybody. And I'm not sure I really have anything more to contribute. It's, I guess when we're talking global, like 80 or 20% of the global energy supplies are going through the Strait of Hormuz, I guess a lot of nations are looking, and few participating. And of course, the latest I've heard from President Trump is that a number of NATO nations now are sending down ships or support after the U.S. has done most of the work. So, as he said, it's going to take a week to 2 weeks for some of the NATO European allies to get their ships down, because, as he said, they've got to cross an ocean or two oceans. So, anyways, probably going to be changes. I don't know what's going on in the Middle East. I don't understand Iran. I don't understand Iran. I mean, it just seems to make no sense. Why wouldn't they want to join the global community of developing and developed nations, and become a global trade partner, and peaceful interaction with the rest of the world, instead of so, at least from what I understand, they're the major global supporter of terrorism and all this and all this sort of stuff. I don't understand it. Makes no sense to me. I guess, as one reporter suggests, they are hell-bent on simply destroying Israel and the U.S. Nothing else matters. As long as they can survive, that's it. I just don't understand it. And if there's any truth, and I don't know if there is, but if there's any truth that the IRCG and the leadership in Iran has killed 30 to 70,000 of their own people to stop any protests and uprising, well, clearly the leadership doesn't give a rat's patootie about their own people. I don't know. I just don't understand it. It makes no sense to me at all. And it's too much. Drives me absolutely friggin' crazy. But what can I do? I don't have the ear of Trump or Rubio, and I certainly don't have the ear of God, so I don't know really what's going on. In any case, okay, I'm going to wind it up. Have a good week, everybody. And as Ringo says, peace. And I'll try to do a better podcast next week.
Can't silence me, can't break my will. I've bled for this, I've paid the bill. Justice ain't a game, it's a fight I choose, and I will never lose. Like a whisper through the dark, like a storm